Hi everyone, we're just about to get started, but we've got a few more people in the waiting room that are still getting admitted, so hold tight, we're almost ready. Hmm. All right, looks like we've got about everybody, so I'm gonna get us started. Hopefully, hopefully the other two people in the waiting room are able to get in eventually, but we'll get there. So hi everyone, my name's Devin. I'm an organizer with Sunrise Movement Missoula, and I dabble in some other organizations as well, but yeah, I'm 19 years old. I've lived in Missoula all my life, and yeah, I'm excited to be hosting this rally. This is super cool to see everyone here. So yeah, thank you all for coming. So first of all, I'd just like to set a few ground rules just so that everybody's aware. Nobody's being rude or disruptive. Try your best to keep everything on your cameras if you are sharing video with us. Trying to keep it appropriate, obviously. Be nice in the chat. Don't be rude to people. And yeah, just otherwise conduct yourself in a way that is appropriate for this rally. Imagine if there were kids here, like conduct yourself in that manner. Otherwise, we do reserve the right to boot people. We have that authority in Zoom. And we don't want to have to do that, but we will if we have to. That being said, again, thank you all so much for coming. This rally was sponsored by a ton of amazing sponsors: Sunrise Movement Montana, Montana Sierra Club, Families for a Livable Climate, Climate Smart Missoula, 350 Montana, Women Bike Missoula, the Jeanette Rankin Peace Center, Home Resource, Missoula Urban Demonstration Project, City of Missoula Energy Conservation and Climate Action, the Roxy Theater, Extinction Rebellion Missoula, and 1,000 New Gardens. So thank you so much to all of our sponsors. And yeah, so just to kick us off, a reminder that a couple of the things, or excuse me, I would like to start off by just welcoming everyone who's here. I would like to welcome people of every race, whether you're white, Black, Latino, Indigenous, Asian. I'd like to welcome all races. So thank you all for coming. I'd like to welcome people of different abilities, whether you have a mental disability or are otherwise differently abled, whether you're perfectly fine, but maybe have a friend who's differently abled. So I'd like to welcome those people. I'd like to welcome people of different gender identities, whether you're cis, trans, agender, non-binary, not quite sure where you align on the gender spectrum. I'd like to welcome all of you. And what else? I'd like to welcome people from all across Montana, whether you're from Missoula, Helena, Billings, Butte, Flathead, or any other, really anywhere in Montana. I'm glad you're here, and I'd like to welcome you. And I'd especially like to welcome people who are having different experiences with this pandemic. I'd like to welcome people who are bored out of their minds, people who are struggling badly, who aren't necessarily sure if they're going to make it through this crisis, but are coming here regardless. And yeah, people on the front lines, essential workers. I know it's hard. And people who might be experiencing job or income insecurity. So yeah, I'd like to welcome all of you. And yeah, it's really nice to see such a big group. So yeah, I'm super excited. All of that being said, we have an amazing speaker lineup. So I'm just going to go over it really quickly. We're going to get started with Millie Bearleggins, move on to Claire Charlot, Tasia, who is a healthcare worker, a middle schooler named Hannah, Patrick Yawaki, Cannon Shane, Nick Shepard, Angeline Cheek, and Benjamin Finnegan. And I'll tell you a little bit more about them once we get to each of them. But for right now, those are our speakers. So thank you all for coming, and we'll get started with Millie Bearleggins.
My name is Millie Bearleggins. I am a Blackfeet native from the Blackfeet tribe. I am also a current student here at the University of Montana in Missoula studying pre-med and biology. I would like to say thank you for you guys, for your attention and for being here today. Very thankful for this opportunity. I think one thing I want to say in the 10 minutes that I have is, what this fight for climate change means to me. I'm a very compassionate person, very passionate about my work, very, very passionate about, helping others and giving back. And that's just because I was raised in a traditional Blackfeet family. I also had access to my elders, so that, really shaped a lot of who I am today, especially with the stories of my ancestors. For the last 400 years, it really literally changed my DNA, no pun intended. Just kidding, totally was. So, this climate change fight is very important to me because, this isn't just a fight for land. It never really was. It wasn't just a fight for clean water. It wasn't just a fight for, rights. This is a fight for our relatives, for our people, for your people, for everybody's well-being. We're all connected, in one way or another. We're connected. And, we see that with how this pandemic has, shook our economy, has shook our social structures, has made a lot of us sit back and think, like, oh my God, like, what's really going on? Like, is this, yeah, this is one of the effects of climate change. And these things are going to keep happening more and more the less we, keep working on it, changing it, trying to get out there and do something, and so climate change to me is like, to me, I'm going to be really honest, right now to have to say that we're in a climate crisis is a slap in my face, because we know that my ancestors, all because this is, the land that you guys, the nation occupies, is stolen lands, stolen indigenous lands, and scientists have proved for more than 140,000 years, indigenous people on this continent never left a carbon footprint compared to most other civilizations around the same time period. The Romans, Athens, Egyptians, something, right? But, indigenous people on this continent didn't, and that says something. Why? Well, it's because of the way we work. What you guys would call traditional knowledge, what I would call a lifestyle, or what you guys would call a culture or religion, a lifestyle to me is I've helped maintain, just like my ancestors before me and, their ancestors before them, We, maintained relationships with animals, with plants, with, the beings from, what you guys would easily understand as, other realms, other earths, worlds. And, we did these things through our songs. We had power in our song because you could read in some of our history books written by these fur traders, natives singing the song to drive the buffalo off the cliff. Though that those songs were given to us by our relatives, which were buffalo, birds, different types of plants, different spirits from the water that said, come fish. These are all stories and, that mark the evolution of our people over time. How, when given that knowledge, how we were able to maintain and keep that knowledge and, maintain, zero carbon footprint for more than 140,000 years. Yet my people, to be, the closest thing to acknowledge 50,000 strong, living solely off the land in some very interesting social planes, and so growing up and knowing that and having that knowledge, having access to these traditional knowledges and having access to, university archives, I came to a realization, this is so important to me because, that this is a reflection of my identity. By maintaining these relationships with not just my people and other people, but maintaining relationships with plants and animals, was also maintaining a relationship with my identity. And the reason why I said, the fact that we're in a global crisis and that we're in a climate crisis is a slap in my face because we took care of this continent for more than 140,000 years. Some of these songs and stories and some of these traditions that takes to get that knowledge was not easy. Hearing those stories and knowing them and just being amazed by like, oh my God, that same blood runs through me. And it hurts because, that's those stories and this land are the only connection I have with my ancestors. That's the only connection I have left. And it's crazy to think about that, the last residential school was closed the year that I was born, 1997. And so, having these stories and, fighting this fight means I'm fighting for what's left of my identity. I'm fighting for what's left of the connection that I have with Mother Earth that I'm so thankful for because she gave me the life that I'm living today. She gave me the mother that I had, the grandmothers that I had, the brothers and sisters and uncles and aunties, the relatives, the plants and the animals, the air that I breathe, the land that I walk on, the water that I drink. She gave that to me, and I can admit there was a time when I was so immersed in, today's society that I didn't mind helping destroy her. But since being with, sitting with my elders and having be asked, what are you going to do? You're going to see things in your lifetime that nobody else has ever saw. And we're there. We're there. And so this climate change is literally a fight for just not my identity and my connection to my ancestors before me and before them. It's also a connection with every other person on this earth because this affects all of us. It affects everything. We see that now. This pandemic has stopped us, made us see that now. And to have this climate crisis deeply, deeply impact my people, it's time for us to stand up and fight. I'm not just saying, just natives are directly affected. I'm saying everybody is affected by this. it's, it's pretty scary when your brothers, your sisters are going missing left and right because there just so happens to be a man camp so far away from an oil field. That hurts. And then, to find out that you guys don't have any more drinking water because they sold your rights, and now they're going to be starting to sell royalties to these big crude oil companies. And now my grandfather, all of his land was seized, and I can't do anything about it. These things are being pulled out from underneath us, and it just, the point we're at now, it's we got to stand up and fight. We got to stop it. We have to urge our leaders, the people that we give power, that are very wealthy, that have no interest in our well-being. We have to stop them. And we have to work together. We're all in this together. That's the main point. Other than fighting for my identity and seeing giving you guys a first world perspective of just how detrimental this fight is to Native Americans. I'm not speaking for every Native, but I'm just saying that this is very important in terms of how it affects us in all aspects. And I'm looking forward to fighting this fight with every single one of you. I'm very, very happy to be here. I'm very glad that you guys have allowed me this space to speak. I'm going to go ahead and pass this on to the next person, and I really, truly appreciate every single one of you. Many prayers to you. Good long life to each one of you. Stay healthy, stay safe. They're very important.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much to Millie Bareleggins. That was an amazing speech. And I think it's really important to understand that our fight for climate justice isn't just that. Our fight for climate justice is a fight for racial justice. It's a fight for economic justice, and it's a fight for justice for all of us, no matter what that looks like. And I think that's really important to remember. So yeah, thank you so much, Millie Bareleggins. And I'd just like to say, now that we've had our first speaker, just a couple chat housekeeping things. If you would like to ask any questions to any of the speakers, feel free to put them in the chat, address them to the public, so send them publicly. Otherwise, we can't really guarantee that we'll field your question. If you send it directly to the speakers, we might not get it. We might not be able to answer it when we do have our Q&A session, so send it publicly. That way we can field your questions. And also, while you're listening, if you really agree with something really resonates with you, and you want to show that, you can just drop a little plus sign in the chat, just like this. And then we know that you appreciated it. And it's a cool way to see like what moments are resonating with what people. And I think it's really cool for our speakers as well. I think they enjoy seeing that. That being said, our next speaker is Claire Charlo. Claire Charlo is a member of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes, as well as an attorney that works as a civil advocate in the Flathead area. She has been involved in organizing around MMIW and environmental work that intersects with tribal justice. Thank you so much for joining us, Claire.
Okay, here I am.
Sahalt, happy Earth Day. As we treat every day as Earth Day, I just wanted to leave a quick message to let everyone know that my name is Claire Charlo. I come from the Confederate Salish and Kootenai tribes. My ancestors come from the Bitterroot Salish tribe, who were forcibly from our land by gunpoint from soldiers back in, I believe, 1891. We were relocated to the Flathead Reservation, where we share land with the Pend Oreille, the Kootenai, and the Salish people. My message for Earth Day is basically that we are in the middle of a pandemic, otherwise we would be gathering all together. I'm leaving this message because I wanted everyone to know that despite the fact that we're in isolation, we're socially distancing, we're doing everything we can to stay safe. that we are facing a pandemic on so many levels. We're looking at poverty. We're looking at our relatives that are incarcerated right now that are testing positive for COVID, and they don't have any type of relief. One of the things that I'm the most upset about is the fact that we are making a kind of a romantic story about our essential workers. Our essential workers that are working the farms for us, a lot of them are migrants. A lot of them aren't eligible for health care. A lot of them are not eligible for any kind of compensation during this time, and yet they are still working and putting food on our tables. And so I also, we're calling them heroes, but how are we providing for them? I also want to talk about the grocery store clerks, the black and brown folks that are basically in these jobs that are underpaid, but now they're suddenly heroes. These heroes are not heroes by agreement. They don't volunteer to be heroes. They're heroes because they don't have a choice. They don't have any other way to make a living so that their family can have food, so their family can have a place to stay. We don't make choices to go into work every day and expose ourselves to a possibly fatal disease if we didn't basically have a capitalistic gun to our head. So I just, on this Earth Day during this pandemic, I want to thank everyone that is working together, to thank everybody that is trying to protect our Earth. Right now, we're seeing the Earth gasp for breath during this pause. We're also seeing the collapse of the global economy. And in that collapse, it's going to be really difficult. Revolution is hard. Revolution is going to be ugly. Revolution is going to take a little bit of time, and it's not going to be pretty. But at this point in time, the pandemic has exposed all the lies that capitalism has put on us. My people have been decimated before by smallpox. We went from 40 to 60,000 people to 17,000 people in less than 15 years after contact. So I'm very familiar with the pandemic. I'm very familiar with losing people, and I don't want to lose people. I do not believe in profit over humanity. I do not believe that we should pick people and let them go die because we want to have profit. Our capitalism, our economy, everything is collapsing, and yet we want to put people back into danger. So in conclusion, I just want to say that I don't want to be all panicked. My message to you is of hope. My message is that we are resilient people. And my message is that my allies, my Indigenous people, that we are in the middle of a pandemic. We're in the middle of change. And at the same time, during this time of change, we have to come together. And I'm seeing that. I'm seeing solidarity throughout communities throughout the world. And let us solidify, let us get together, let us fight for this chance to have a way to live without capitalism, without basically having to put your life on the line every single day, so that we can have a place to live, so that we can have food, so that our basic needs are met. In solidarity with everybody else, may we protect the Earth. May our Earth have the protection, that this is an opening for the Earth to be able to say that it can heal itself. And lastly, I know that Montana has gotten a lot of snowstorms, god dang it. I just wanted to say that with the snow comes our ancestors. With the snow comes our songs. With the snow comes our protection. And so even though we've had a few snowstorms, I do believe that our ancestors are with us and they will protect us. Unlech Pesia.
Amazing. Thank you so much to Claire Charlo. Another amazing speech and a personal friend of mine. So really great to see her speak. And yeah, we'll move right on to the next one, because we're running a little bit behind schedule, Missoula time, as I'm sure most of you are familiar with. But our next speaker is Tasia. Tasia attributes her environmental activism to her mom, who is also a social justice and eco-justice warrior, beginning here in Missoula in the 70s. She was a member of Hellgate's environmental club SAVE and later co-founded Origins Education, a preschool that focuses on eco-literacy and providing organic and locally sourced meals. She currently works as a nurse in an inpatient psychiatric facility. So now, without further ado, Tasia.
Hi friends, happy Earth Day. I'm so glad to be here with you today. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. I know this isn't the 50th Earth Day anniversary that we initially planned. I was part of making the 30th anniversary Earth Day rally in Caras Park, and I remember feeling so much life and joy around me, so much vibrancy from the people who attended, the sense of community and hope. And I wanted that all for us this year. But we're not alone. In a 2018 national survey, 71% of people felt like climate crisis was an issue needing to be addressed, and half of them felt hopeless about it. And I know those numbers haven't gotten lower. So together, we make up a large body. And we may be suffering from something called eco-grief or eco-anxiety. Another term we use where I work is solastalgia. I work with teenagers who have recently considered suicide or attempted suicide. And one of the things that they talk about is a sense of despair for the future and the environment they live in. So together with them and our community, we need to recognize the effects of solastalgia and also what we can do.
Have a great day. Bye.
Effects include the sense of anxiety and depression, even trauma and PTSD. There's a feeling of hopelessness and fear. Some people turn to substance abuse, and aggression has also been related to this sense of climate crisis. It obviously is an individual experience, and I would not advise you to compare yourself to anyone except for yourself yesterday. But it's also important to keep in mind that eco-terrorism affects displaced peoples, minorities, people of low income, the elders, the children, and those with pre-existing physical and psychological conditions more. So those community members need our support. Like kids who suffer with suicidal ideation, we need to promote resiliency. We need to practice and share coping skills. And so I just wanted to run down a couple for you today in hopes that they might ring a reminder in you, help you be inspired to do something. First of all, take action. Be active. Start with our healthy pledge. Promote healthy community by looking through and committing to something in our pledge that speaks to you, or many things. Or volunteer outside of here, either with a group or on your own. Call your representatives. Talk about the ways that you want them to represent you. I know the Clark Fork Coalition wasn't able to join to pick up the garbage, but there is still garbage on our streets, on our rivers, in our parks, and it would feel so good to be out there and helping with that. Also, consider living more in line with your personal values. Consider your consumption habits and recycling. Consider different diet choices. Not only would a greener diet and a more organic diet help you with the environmental impact, but your guts create a large microbiome of producing hormones, including dopamine and serotonin, which help you with your overall mental emotional mood. Same with getting out and being healthy, biking, running, walking, being in nature. All of those things provide physical exercise, which is good for your mental well-being and your physical health. And if you get yourself to work on a bike or on your feet, you're also minimizing pollution. Another way to help support yourself and to focus on resiliency is to foster caring and trusting relationships with like-minded people, to show up for each other, to cheer each other on. You're not going to feel as alone and as sad if you can cheer someone else on and feel their reciprocal joy. Making small goals, viewing the problem in small pieces can help us to feel a sense of success and ultimately get us to the bigger picture. And in that same idea, don't view anything as unsolvable. That is the only guaranteed way for it to remain unsolved. Have hope, have creativity, don't give in. Avoid isolating. I know this is a hard thing to say right now, but reach out. Don't be alone with your grief. Don't be alone in your helplessness. There are people who want to be there, your neighbors, your friends, your family, people in this community. Together, we are stronger. Spending time in nature has been proven to reduce stress, not just in the moment, but up to 30 days later. And maybe take some home with you. Pick up a rock and put it in your pocket, a leaf, maybe not a flower, but something to remind you that you are still connected. I know there's a lot of information out there, and some of it is good and a lot of it is bad, and I just want to remind you to disengage when you need to go inward and find your peace, to cope with the grief, and to be resilient and realign yourself with your goals and with your community and come out stronger. We are not going to be warriors for the earth if we are not taking care of ourselves. That being said, I have to tell you, I am not a professional. I'm not offering you medical advice. And if you need help, I encourage you to seek out the aid of a doctor or a therapist or a community member with whom you trust. As a nurse, I am adhering to the American Nurses Association Code of Ethics, and I wanted to read to you one of the ethics codes that brings me great pride and helps fortify me in these difficult days. It reads, with the meta paradigm of nursing, the profession's advocacy for social justice extends to eco-justice. Environmental degradation, aridification, earth resources exploitation, ecosystem destruction, waste, and other environmental assaults disproportionately affect the health of the poor and ultimately affect the health of all humanity. Nursing must advocate for policies, programs, and practices within the healthcare system that maintain, sustain, and repair the natural world. We're in this together. I hope to see you next year. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tasia. The relationship between our earth and our mental health is very important to acknowledge, and we do need to take care of ourselves to be eco warriors. So thank you so much, Tasia, for speaking to that. Our next speaker is an amazing middle schooler her name is Hannah, and she's going to share an original poem with us today. So I'm super excited to present Hannah.
Hi, my name is Hannah, and this is a poem I wrote for Earth Day.
The earth we stand on is our home. The magical orb spinning in space. Space we will never fully understand. Understand this is our only hope. Hope that we can make the changes needed. Changes needed to prevent global warming. Global warming that is endangering the lives of entire species. Species that are part of the chain that connects us all. Connections to the spirits that guard. Spirits that won't be crushed. Crushed forests will start to regenerate. Regenerate to stand tall and strong. Strong forces will heal. Heal the tired bones. Bones dug up by humans. Humans destroying our planet. Our planet is our home. Our home is this earth. The earth we stand on is our home.
Awesome. Thank you, Hannah. I know I didn't write poems that well when I was in middle school, so props to her. That was a really amazing poem. That was the first time I heard it, so yay. Wow. So just a reminder, if any of you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Most of our speakers are here today, and they would definitely be willing to field some of your questions. We now have an amazing person named Patrick. So, oh shoot, give me just a sec here. Okay, so Patrick, excuse me, sorry. I lost the thing I was looking for. Give me just a moment here. Okay, here we go.
Hello, everybody.
Oh,
I just my video isn't working right now. That's the only thing. But
sorry, Patrick. I was gonna intro you really quick. I just lost the intro.
Okay.
But yeah, Patrick is an enrolled tribal member of the Zuni Pueblo in New Mexico, as well as a Turtle Mountain Anishinaabe and White Bear Nakota. He is a husband, a father of 4 children, and he currently resides on the Flathead Reservation. He recently graduated in the first cohort of the Tribal Administration and Governance bachelor's degree program at Salish Kootenai College in spring 2019. And since 2016, his educational experience has allowed him to engage in Native Get Out the Vote and food sovereignty efforts as a community organizer and member of a few community nonprofit boards and action groups. Currently, he's employed as a food sovereignty coordinator for the Arlee Community Development Corporation in the Jocko Valley. His focuses are, but not limited to, treaty rights, tribal sovereignty, self-determination, economic development, natural resource conservation, food sovereignty, broadband development, Native Get Out the Vote, and voting rights. So yeah, Patrick, we're gonna play your video first, but then I believe we're gonna have a Q&A right after, so.
Is it okay if I just speak?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. My name is Patrick Iwaki. I am the food sovereignty coordinator for the Arlee Community Development Corporation. I started the position in November of 2019. I entered the position with a background in tribal administration and governance, as said. In this program, I really delved into understanding what tribal sovereignty and what self-determination means to tribal communities. And I was able to use Get Out the Vote and food sovereignty as avenues of advocacy for me to try to better the community in terms of the needs that I was seeing personally, as well as some of the actions that have been happening around Turtle Island or North America or the United States, in terms of localized efforts and projects that other people are doing to try to incorporate into something here. I've been an advocate for food sovereignty since 2016, as well as Get Out the Vote, and my advocacy has brought me to speak to different community members, both tribal and non-tribal, part of the tribal CSKT government, tribal council members, tribal heads, department heads, focused on climate change efforts. The CSKT started a climate change strategic plan, and they're in their update of their second one. And being able to be part of those groups allowed me to speak on food sovereignty and the importance of localizing our food systems, especially for the CSKT tribe and the Flathead Reservation, which I reside, and also have family members tribal as part of their tribal membership. And so I've been able to co-create a food sovereignty strategic plan with a local producer named Michael. He produces organic food as well as collects natural seeds. And so we had, and he's also a non-tribal person as well. So we're able to bring two communities together in terms of trying to solve the problem of food insecurity on the Flathead Reservation. And I think that's really important to highlight and acknowledge. You know, through all the political differences that we face, there's important things such as how we acquire our food and how we consume our food that span racial divides, or you know, these ethnic divides. So being able to come to the same table and come up with solutions is something that we should be striving to do. And we were able to do that with this food sovereignty strategic plan. And it was presented to CSKT Tribal Council in 2019, September 2019. And it really sparked a dialogue in how we should be relating to each other, how we should be looking out for each other, and how we should be advocating for the needs in our communities. Being able to take that experience and then my Get Out the Vote, which allowed me to canvass around the Flathead Reservation and other reservations around Montana. I was really able to hear what the people needed and bring it together, put it into a document for presentation. From there, I graduated last year in June and was very lucky to be able to have a position like a food sovereignty coordinator available to me, so locally. And I was able to use my experiences in these avenues to be able to take on this position and really hit the ground running. My initial objective for my position is to do a flat Jocko Valley, or a school district number 8 food security needs assessment to every community household in the Jocko Valley. This is what I believe is the best way in terms of food sovereignty to gain the data and information that you need to put into a plan, to combat food insecurity and other economic development needs and health and wellness and other cultural. I kind of term the agricultural heritage preservation, and that kind of just talks about how the way that we've either grown our foods or gathered or hunted, fished our foods, these are cultural practices and activities that not just Native people hold, but people, homesteaders that have come into the area who have brought their identities and cultures, their practices, their identities, that we all share a community, and that we all have these backgrounds, and that all these should be incorporated in the decision making in terms of the food system or how we produce and process and consume our foods. And so this is the project that I've created for the Arley CDC, and was just prepared to initiate, but because of COVID-19, have changed my focus to be more responsive to the immediate needs of the community members in the Jocko Valley, and to kind of focus on this effort. We've created a food distribution site it's called the Brown Building on Highway 93 in Arley, Montana. And we've been able to centralize a location for individuals, community members in the area to provide meals and household needs throughout the week. Currently, we are administering 2 programs One is a kids meal that is offered Monday through Friday, 4:30 to 5 o'clock at the Brown Building. And it is in partnership with the Boys and Girls Club of the Flathead Reservation. And also a household food distribution every Friday from 1 to 3 p.m. And having these programs has really brought the community together, both tribal and non-tribal, who are facing these needs in this crisis. And being able to see that people are working together has really brought the community together. And because of this effort, we have been able to organize with other community members throughout the reservation and created a grassroots effort called the Flathead Reservation Community Action. And this is also located on Facebook as well, if you'd like to keep up with us. This was created out of response for COVID-19 and understanding that there's unidentified people throughout the reservation who are in need, especially elders, immune compromised people, and people who have been ordered by their healthcare providers to stay home or stay quarantined. And we've created a needs form that has been circulated, and we use as documentation of the participants in our program, and really has been able to elevate us into a much more structured grassroots organization to combat the food insecurity or other household needs throughout the reservation, and not just in the Jocko Valley. And having this has been able to work with other people who really do share leadership goals and values about caring for one another. And it was totally organic and natural how this happened, and it's been a positive experience ever since. To continue with some of the questions that was asked, just to touch on the importance of food sovereignty, I'm pretty sure everyone may know, in terms of people going hungry or missing meals. This is a daily occurrence for a lot of people. Something that COVID-19 exposed was that this is chronic needs, that people go hungry every day. There's households that we experience that who have poor plumbing or poor water access, or their ability to even cook foods is not to the standard that we all may have. And so we need to pay attention to the people who are unidentified and who are facing food insecurities every day. But what I'm focused on in food security, or in terms of food security, is the availability, the accessibility, and the ability of the household. Availability means, do these people have quality foods, organic, nutritional foods available to them at their grocery store, or is there programs that they have available? Accessibility means some of like the hidden factors such as transportation or financial needs that some households face that can't necessarily get them to the location to acquire those foods. Or even being participant in SNAP programs, having SNAP local representatives to sign up for SNAP programs in their community, so they don't have to travel across the county to acquire these services. These are all parts of accessibility. And then ability relates to how the household is able to cook those foods. Do they have the know-how? Do they have the understanding, the recipes to use their foods in efficient ways, or do they have the infrastructure or the kitchenware to be able to cook these foods in healthy and easily consumable ways? And I really want to talk about how food sovereignty has 3 different levels. I generally look at food sovereignty personally as the individual's day-to-day decision making about the foods that they put in their body, the type of nutrition that they seek. Do they seek nutritional foods? These are our daily decisions that we make that you can term as your personal food sovereignty. Do you take time to grow a garden? Do you take time to go to your to your farmer's market personally? Those are personal decisions that you make in terms of your own personal food sovereignty. The next level I would say would be household level food sovereignty, and this is kind of made not just with yourself, but other people in your family and in your household, and the kind of needs that they need as well, and your financial ability to purchase foods. This is what I term as household food sovereignty. And then there would be the community level, which many people are aware of, community level, or in terms of tribal level food sovereignty. These are decisions that are made by governmental leaders or organizational leaders that represent the community and are taking an interest, a self-interest in making food decisions or on their food system. And again, I wanted to touch on just that COVID-19, or that food insecurity isn't anything new, and that COVID-19 just exposed the reality of it all, and that this is something that we understand in the Jocko Valley that we need to combat, and we appreciate all the food banks and you know the efforts that they have had, but understanding that these food banks are experiencing an influx of participants and are overstressed, that something needs to be done on a systematic level to combat food insecurity, and that there are people that are missing food every day. And then what food sovereignty in Montana looks like, I really enjoy Montana because it's so, there's so many different food producers throughout the state, and there's such a strong agricultural identity within the state. There's the tribes represented within the state of Montana all hold cultural identities that relate to stewardship of the land, or their relationship with their food and how they acquired it. There's tribes who gathered and hunted and fished, or there's tribes here who grew gardens and huge farms. So understanding these histories, we have a lot of tools in our toolbox to create something that is adequate and represents the identity of Montana and what the people, the citizens of Montana need. Within each community, there's different efforts at food sovereignty and attempts at understanding what food sovereignty is, and we should be able to only build off of those attempts. And I would just suggest that people take the time to research the different efforts that are going around, and just to make sure that if there's something in their neighborhood, that they can help support them as well. I would also say that we have a lot of work to do too as food sovereignty warriors. We have a lot of systematic control. A lot of it is ranching, and a lot of these are kind of have strain on the environment, especially climate change. And there's much more effective and efficient and sustainable ways, especially in terms of finance and environment, that can be implemented in terms of how we produce our foods. And we would just, I would just hope that that we can focus on, in terms of this, to lower our gas emissions or our fossil fuel emissions into the environment, that we can try to localize our foods and create more sustainable approaches to farming and agriculture. That's probably my 15 minutes, and I'd just like to say thank you for your time. And I'm available on Facebook. We have Arley CDC Food Sovereignty Program. That's that you can see. We have information that is posted on there if anyone would like to get involved. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Patrick. That's super inspiring. And yeah, food sovereignty is incredibly important in the fight for climate justice. So thank you so much for speaking to that. You're doing some amazing work. I think we all appreciate you, looking at the chat especially. I'd like to remind people that now that we're about halfway through, that if you'd like to see the rest of this, but you have to go, we're actually recording this. So if you haven't already, sign the pledge so that we can send you the full recording once this is over. And yeah, otherwise, we're going to go into a quick Q&A session now. We're going to be doing a Q&A session for about 5 minutes. So if you have any questions for Patrick or any of the speakers from beforehand, feel free to drop them in the chat. Or I think it would be okay if we unmuted ourselves as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to unmute and ask a question, but be respectful.
No.
All right, not a question, I guess. But yeah, any takers in the chat?
Devin, this is Vicki Watson. I was going to ask if Patrick could explain his the volunteer needs. You know, how can people volunteer and help with what he's doing?
I have a email, and you can email your information. We need, especially drivers, Monday through Friday, up to 4 drivers, and then 1 to 2 people to sit at the Brown Building to hand out bags of food to the kids. And then on Fridays, we need a total of 6 distribution workers to effectively or efficiently carry out the activities for those household distributions. And then my food sovereignty, it's foodsovereignty@arleycdc.org.
Once again, Vicki Watson, I'll add to that our Missoula Farmers Markets managers are figuring out how they're going to continue to offer the farmers markets this summer. They're going to need a lot of more volunteers than they usually have, because they hope to have people take orders and pack and distribute those. Once again, they'll need drivers and packers and so on to take those out to people who can't come to the farmers market. And then those who can come to the farmers market, they're going to be sort of managing traffic and social distancing and things like that. And there is a volunteer training this Saturday. I put the information about it into the chat line there, and who you would need to contact to participate in that training. They sure do need some volunteers.
Awesome. So we have time for one more quick question if anybody wants to unmute and ask one more question, but otherwise we're going to move on. So wait for a couple seconds and see if anybody else has anything.
There's one in the chat. It says, what would Patrick say are the biggest barriers to the in-home food readiness portion? Knowledge, cooking supplies, adequate kitchen space? Question mark.
I would say that because of assimilation and because of not just or within the tribal community, the way that we've been forced to with rations and commodity style foods, that's one reason why we have such poor diets. If you're given only the things to make fry bread, you know, and that's all you have access to, that's kind of how we have established so much, you know, health disparities. And in terms of other homes, I would say that convenience has, in terms of the you know, our food markets and things like that, corn style markets, like a grocery or gas station style grocery stores and things like that, who only offer varieties of different ways of prepared corn, like your chips and your soda pops and, you know, just just markets that are limited in nutritional valued foods, that these have kind of distanced our traditional relationship with food. I would say that we had a more romantic relationship with food, just having that daily, you know, participation in how we grew our food or how we acquired our food every day. It wasn't until the food or supermarkets came around that, you know, that people didn't have to didn't have to necessarily hunt every day or grow a garden. They could just go to the grocery store and get it. So, you know, it's a lot easier to heat up a frozen pizza than to, you know, cook a nutritional meal from fresh vegetables. So convenience, assimilation of culture, convenience, these types of things have limited our ability to have healthier lives, I think.
Awesome. Thank you. And it looks like we have one more quick question that I feel like you'd probably like to answer. How can people make money donations to Arlie CDC Food Sovereignty?
I saw on the list that is put out with this event. We have our link in there, but if you want to go to arliecdc.org/donations, there's links in there, or else if you go to our Facebook page, there's links to donations on there as well. Or else you can write a check. If you go to arliecdc.org, our PO box is listed on there. Yeah, and I guess one more thing too, I was just reading the news today, and since everyone's on here, I would suggest looking at what the World Food Program has said in terms of like response to COVID and the potential of a famine within a couple months. And so these things are realities, and we should all be thinking about it. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Patrick. We're going to move along to our next speaker. But yeah, thank you so much, Patrick. That was amazing. And there is another Q&A at the end if any of you have any more questions. I think he'll still be around then. But yeah, we'll see. So our next performer is Canon Shane. Canon Shane is a self-described multi-instrumentalist minority composer, currently based in Montana and studying at the University of Montana. They write music inspired by nature and their pursuit of the meaning of life. And today we have a wonderful piece that Canon has composed titled Recycled Materials. The instrumentation is entirely recyclable materials, as you maybe could have guessed. So yeah, Canon Shane. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much to Ken and Shane for sharing that piece with us. Very important to recycle, but yeah, it's a fun little piece. I liked watching it. It's yeah. And sorry, there were some technical difficulties there, so hopefully you were all able to enjoy it despite the technical difficulties. But if that's the worst of our technical difficulties for today, we're doing okay, I think. So our next speaker is going to be Nick Shepard. He's going to be talking about taking action. So just in that vein, if any of you are feeling artistically inclined today, Climate Smart has a hashtag Climate Art for All. If you want to make some art, post it on Instagram, Facebook, whatever. That's an action you can do today if you want to make some art. But otherwise, Nick is a sophomore at UM, majoring in political science with a minor in climate change studies, excuse me. He's been working with the Missoula He's been working with the Missoula Sunrise Hub to organize youth power for action on climate change and a just transition that melds social justice with climate justice. So with all that, here is Nick Shepard.
Nick.
Hey, Montana. As you've heard from all these speakers, there are quite a few items on our collective to-do list, which can seem daunting, or actually a better word might be crushing, soul-crushing. How in the world, as just a concerned citizen from Montana, USA, how can you possibly wrench away these enormous amounts of power from those less concerned folks? And how can you implement the changes necessary to ensure a vibrant, livable future for yourself and your fellow? Seems like quite a task, doesn't it? Well, fortunately, it isn't just you in this fight. It isn't just a group of people tuning into this rally right now. It's all of us. And whether the wealthy and powerful like it or not, their power is ultimately derived from us, which means we've been dealt a hell of a hand. We just need to play it right. Not much more than a year ago, I had no idea how to even begin to approach taking this issue on. Really, I guess now that I think about it, my plan was just to, vote Democrat, let them handle it. Deep down, if I'm being honest with myself, I think I just accepted that we're all screwed. It sucks, but it's out of our control. Fortunately, I soon became acquainted with a little group called the Sunrise Movement. And let's just say their message isn't exactly all doom and gloom. Something that Sunrise likes to talk about, Sunrise and a lot of other activist organizations, called the 3.5% rule, or the 3.5% phenomenon. Essentially, it's been found by looking at all the social movements across the globe in the last century, and there's been quite a few, that not one single one, not one, has failed when at least around 3.5% of the population becomes actively involved in protesting. Pretty miraculous when you think about it. Let's crunch a few numbers. The U.S. as a whole, 3.5% goes down to about 11.5 million people, which, no getting around that is a lot. But our state, it's only 35,000. And if we bring it down even further to the city level, where most of our organizing is realistically going to take place, the numbers become even more manageable. That's under 4,000 for Billings, about 2,500 for Missoula, roughly 1,700 for Bozeman, and only around 1,100 for Helena. Now, I don't want to bore you with too many more numbers, so we'll just let those figures sit and marinate with you. What I do want to talk about is what you taking action can look like. If you have a company or a privately owned business, you can begin transitioning to a cooperatively owned business. You can help host online teach-ins or reading groups that explore eco-socialism, regenerative economic solutions, or mutual aid. You could cultivate a garden or a mini garden at your very own home. You could do a small cleanup project in a park or natural area that you've been visiting during the shelter-in-place period. You can create nature art at one of these same sites and share it for the world to see. You can create and share a photo or a video about why you support the Earth Day Pledge. Sunrise is the group with which I've worked the most, so I'll delve a little deeper into what some of the actions I've done with them look like. But bear in mind, these actions could certainly be carried out in association with any number of the great groups out there. Families for a Livable Climate, 350.org, Extinction Rebellion, Sierra Club, the list goes on. You could even start your own group. One action I love is confronting the people with the power to implement actual change now. What that has looked like for me in Sunrise is simply attending these politicians' events, ordinarily the ones who aren't quite there yet on substantive climate action, and calling them out, using my voice as a concerned citizen to say, hey, you take fossil fuel money, you support this pipeline, but not a Green New Deal. You know, what's going on there? And oftentimes, people in attendance, the supporters, they'll kind of, they'll gasp, like, whoa, I didn't know you supported that. And hey, there's a reason they don't always advertise this stuff. Sometimes they really will make actual changes to their policy, but more often than not, you at least get them on record saying, gee, I care about this whole climate issue, but I don't know if I really care that much. Once you get them to concede that, you're in a good spot from which to apply more pressure. Another way to act is striking. In Missoula, for several months running until the pandemic hit, we had a strike every Friday from noon to 1, at first out in front of the courthouse, and then we moved them to right in front of Northwestern Energy. And the strike started small, just a handful of dedicated folks, and the numbers still ebb and flow week to week, but they've been growing. Now, whatever number I gave you before, a couple thousand for Missoula, or if you're in a larger or smaller community, just 3.5%. Roughly 1 out of every 28 people. Imagine for a moment, of course, once we're on the other side of our current health crisis. Imagine that number of people lining the streets in your community, singing, chanting, demanding as one a vibrant, livable future. Imagine yourself being a part of that. Thank you.
Whew. That last part gives me chills every time. I'm super excited to working towards building a livable future with all of you. And yeah, thank you so much to Nick. That was great. Yeah, Nick stepped up and took care of business. And yeah, it was an amazing speech. So thank you, Nick. So our next speaker is Angeline Cheek. She's going to be talking about the KXL. Angeline Cheek is a Hunkpapa Lakota and Oglala Sioux activist and community organizer living on the Fort Peck Reservation. She has long been fighting against injustice and civil rights violations in her community, including organizing prayer walks around the reservation and in the surrounding area, community walks in opposition of drugs/alcohol, and suicide prevention. She formerly worked as a Native student advocate in Wolf Point schools, and she currently works as an Indigenous justice organizer for the ACLU with a particular focus on stopping the KXL pipeline. So with all that, we have Angeline Cheek.
Hello, everybody. My name is Angeline Cheek. I'm an enrolled member of the Fort Peck, Assiniboine, and Sioux tribes. So today I'm going to be talking to you about the KXL pipeline and the detrimental impact that it has on our environment and the northeastern Montana. And I'm also going to talk about how this pandemic, COVID-19, affects the communities in the northeastern region. So I'm going to start it off by, from the very beginning, I think it was 2014, 2013, there was a ceremony in Rosebud, South Dakota. At the time, I was staying with my grandparents. And I remember going to a ceremony and they had a spiritual camp set up on the Rosebud Reservation. And we only took food out to the camp and, we said some prayers. And then after that, I ended up going to college, and then I ended up moving back here on the Fort Peck Reservation, my homelands. I'm always back and forth from Rosebud to Fort Peck, Pine Ridge, Standing Rock, so I understand the detrimental impact that these pipelines have on our area. If you take a look at Flint, Michigan, what happened there, and the people there understand why it's important to fight against the pipeline, because we don't want it to affect our water, our area, and so that's how my involvement kind of got started with KXL, was being in Rosebud, South Dakota. I learned from the elders and the people there. I think it was Leonard Crodog and Paula Antoine. Leonard Crodog held the ceremonies and everything turned out to be really good. And I remember being at the Rosebud Land Office, the director, Paula Antoine, and she spoke about, what the detrimental impact, the negative impacts that it was going to have on the environment, and the medicines that we use, like for common colds, sage, cedar, all of those things is what we're trying to protect so that our people may live. And our ancestors, they fought very hard, and that's why we're here today. And we're survivors, we're survivors of the genocide and the oppression. But still today's day, history is repeating itself, and so that's my involvement with the KXL. And then when I moved back here to Fort Peck, I noticed, I didn't really notice anything going on. I know there was a few people that were opposing the KXL, the late councilwoman Pearl Hopkins, she talked about it, and I happened to be sitting in the council chambers and Pearl Hopkins goes, we have to stop this pipeline. And she's an elder, I think she's in her late 70s now, but, I'm really thankful for her, because I was telling her about the walks that I went to against the drug awareness, the man camp awareness, human trafficking, and things like that when I was in Pine Ridge and Rosebud, and I went down there and I helped supported my relatives, because I have ancestors from there and I have roots from there. So that's what brought me to South Dakota and North Dakota areas, because my family tree goes back to those areas. And I remember Pearl Hopkins telling me, she said, ask for the Fort Peck flag. She said, when you're on those walks, when you're doing awareness walks and when you're supporting the other Sioux tribes, because they're a sister to our tribe, we all come from down there and it all starts in the Black Hills. And so from that point, I felt honored that she gave me the Fort Peck flag and I was able to carry that, and she was the elder. And so with that Fort Peck flag, when we used to go on awareness walks, I'd go down there and they were bringing awareness to the communities, because they were trying to educate the people on this impact of man camps, what's happening with abductions, increased crime rates, increased drug trafficking, all of those things. And there's even statistics and data out there that the Department of Justice has on these issues with human trafficking and people getting abducted, especially the 3 affiliated tribes. I know that they really got affected when the Bakken oil field started up. And so Pearl Hopkins, I took the Fort Peck flag and I went down to those reservations, and I just helped support it, you know, and got to meet new relatives, found out that some of them were my relatives. And, you know, it was an exciting experience, and I'm really thankful for them to teach me, you know, that about this fight and about what our ancestors meant and about the history of our people. And that's what it all about, comes all about, is through the culture and our way of life, protecting our lands. And, you know, it's, first we have to fight for our ceremonies and things like that, but, you know, I wanted to mention Pearl Hopkins though, and then with her flag, I took it when Dakota Access Pipeline, you know, started up. I was also there at that first ceremony too, you know, held by Evelyn and Cedric Goodhouse, my Hunka parents. And so when they held the first ceremony, I was able to attend and be there, and they also talked about, you know, why we have to fight for this water, and we don't want people to be fighting over bottled water, and that we have clean water. And then I got to hang the flag. So that flag that Pearl Hopkins gave me, I ended up giving it to Standing Rock, you know, to show our support, that, you know, us grassroots people, that we support them in the movement. And then from there, I came back here to Fort Peck, and then I started to educate our community. And so we held awareness workshops. I worked with the tribal court, Stacy Smith, 4-star. She's the chief judge of Fort Peck, the tribal court. So I talked with her, and then we collaborated together. We got these workshops going, you know, across the reservation. We did drug and awareness walks, you know, in opposition to meth and what these man camps were gonna bring, and these oil pipelines. And then we held human trafficking workshops. And then at one of those, we did invite the Department of Justice, and then they came. And then also the Department of Justice held a public workshop on human trafficking. And then from there, that's when I learned that they had the statistics and the data of the abduction rate, the crime, the increased crime rate, and the black market organ selling. It was an international trade where people were selling organs. And then that was the first time that I heard of that though. But I was really glad to learn from them that, you know, these are government officials and they were giving us this information. But then it made me question, what are they doing to prevent that? You know, if they know that human trafficking is affecting the communities and having increased crime rates, you know, why allow it to continue? Why not try to develop a plan, you know, some type of you know, really strong task force teams to help fight that? And so we held the human trafficking workshops, and here at Fort Peck, and we educated the community, and then we developed a community safety plan. Like, what are we gonna do if these man camps come near our reservation? We have kids that roam around and they play basketball, and, you know, we have everybody walking around in the evening times and not knowing that these truckers could pick them up. And so we wanted to start up an early warning system, and I think that law enforcement got that together. And the next county over, Valley County, they developed a sex offender list that we could go on to. Like, if the man camps come into the area, they developed a system where we could look to see what TransCanada workers are sex offenders or domestic violence, you know, things like that. So we did a lot of work here at Fort Peck for about the past 3 years now. And, you know, it was a lot of hard work, but, you know, that's what it's all about, is educating the community on why this pipeline is so important to fight against, and the fracking, what it's going to cause. So working on here on the Fort Peck reservation, I found out that we had a Murphy oil spill in the 1960s or 70s, and it contaminated the well water. The tribal health department went out there and they tested it because people were getting sick and figure out what was wrong with their skin. And at that point, when the tribal health department went out there and checked the well waters, and that's when they found out about how contaminated the water was. And one of the elders, Cheyenne Foote, when we were at the United States-Canada border, when we did our ceremony, she did mention in one of our videos that she was one of those teenagers that drank the contaminated water. So she wants our future generations to have clean water. So from there, the Fort Peck tribes, they developed the water rule system where it supplies the whole northeastern Montana. It doesn't only affect Native Americans, but if this oil pipeline, it's not about when, it's not about it's about when it's going to break. That's what it's all about, is when it's going to break. And if it does break, when it does, it's going to affect the whole northeastern Montana's water rural supply system, and we're going to have contaminated water again. We did have a lot of people that passed away from the oil spill, the Murphy oil spill back in the 1960s. So Fort Peck, we did learn our lesson the hard way with fracking and oil. And from there, I got invited to, I think, Indigenous Environmental Network. They sent me up to Canada, me and one of the youth here, Poplar students, and we got a chance to tour the tar sands. When we toured the tar sands, and this is what I always tell everybody, you need to go up to Canada, Alberta, and you need to experience of having the migraine, being nauseated the next day, and seeing the tailing ponds, how much negative impact that it has on the birds and their sacred animals in Canada, because they have a different culture from the Lakota and the Dakota and Nakota. And, it was, for me, it was hard to see the elders cry. They have a lot of skin problems. They cannot drink their water. They have to haul in bottled water. And, just in order to, think about the babies. I guess some of the babies are born with a dormant cancer because of the contamination of the water from the tar sands. And it was called Indigenous Voices Rising workshop that we went to. And to hear those elders' stories and crying, and showing us their sacred areas, how they were destroyed, that's a form of genocide, still trying to get rid of us. And that's why I always say history is repeating itself. But when we toured the tar sands that day, they fed us a traditional meal. And when they caught some deer, some of the deer had cancer tumors, so they just kind of had to throw them away or dispose of them. And then on that day, I think they caught about maybe 100 fish. And then so 50% of those fish had cancer tumors in them. And if you think about that, we have rare sturgeon here in the Missouri River. And if the fish got contaminated up there, then, that's going to happen here. And we're going to be fighting over bottled water. And so it's really going to affect our community, when this oil pipeline breaks. And for me, we want our future generations, we want them to go on, but, and that's what we're worried about. And if you see the other day on the news that they had protesters wanting to open up the government, with this pandemic going on. With this pandemic going on, it's going to affect our communities too. Being up at the United States-Canada border, we've seen that there was no social distancing. They didn't have any masks or anything like that. So, just think about the man camp areas. And I went to a Trans-Canada meeting. It was a community meeting, and it was open, it was public, it was held in Glasgow, Montana. But Trans-Canada, the company told us, I said, this is the question that I asked Trans-Canada. So if I applied for a job with you, how long would I be employed for? And they told me roughly around 8 months. So this pipeline is supposed to create 1,000 jobs, but it's only going to be temporary. And then one of the Glasgow community members said, well, I'm going to be working on the pipeline. Can I get a permanent position? And then TransCanada didn't know how to answer that. You know, they said, well, it'll only be temporary and only certain people will get to, you know, certain people will get to have permanent positions. So it's not going to create 1,000 jobs. It's just temporary jobs, and the money is not going to come to us. And if you look in the United States Environmental Protection Agency, April 2015, if you look at the government documents that it has there, you know, if this pipeline goes through, it's going to create more, like maybe 50% chance more of climate change happening. We're seeing climate change now happening, and you know, right now with this COVID-19, it proves that oil is not essential, you know, and we see that. And the United States is only getting a small taste of what us Indigenous people have to face on our communities, you know, and we're in times of mourning also. And I want to send prayers and thoughts out to the people that lost loved ones to this COVID-19. You know, my prayers go out to you in my heart. But, you know, the United States government, you know, when we had smallpox blankets sent to us and killed off our ancestors, and, you know, so this COVID-19, I'm kind of looking at it like that way, like, you know, now they're getting a small taste of what they did to the Indigenous people. And you see people fighting over bottled water. I was in Williston, North Dakota, big oil town, you know, everybody's into oil. So I went there and I was like, I was looking in the water section and I seen a lot of oil workers. They were picking out their water, no water on the shelves at all. So to me, I was like, why are they getting bottled water when they're working on the pipeline? You know, and that's what we're trying to fight against. You know, if you look at it in this way, climate change, this is an example of climate change. Buying bottled water, people are going to be fighting over bottled water on the shelves, toilet paper, you know, essential goods. The economy is like kind of crashing right now. You know, but the Indigenous communities, we went through that. You know, the United States government, the whole United States, the whole world, you know, is worried and panicking about this COVID-19. But the Indigenous communities, we had to struggle like that since the beginning of time when we were put on reservations, concentration camps. When we were put on concentration camps, that's the struggle that we have. The United States, what the world is experiencing is what we Indigenous communities already experienced with the smallpox blankets, you know, with our ancestors getting sick and, you know, fighting over the bottled water. Why are these pipeline workers fighting over bottled water? That's what climate change is going to look like. You know, if we could keep continuing, and the United States government and the world should take a look at this. If this happens in the future again, we need to create a sustainable community. And if you look at it, we're short on masks, we're short on gloves. Why doesn't the United States create permanent jobs to create extra things like that? And think ahead, you know. Our ancestors in the Indigenous communities, we always thought ahead, and that's why this is what I always say, we need to stay one step ahead. We need to plan, we need to make up some kind of plan, you know, growing a garden, you know, creating a more sustainable community. What else can we develop? You know, what else can we develop? Oil is not essential at this time. If this happens again in the future, we better be prepared for it. We could create permanent jobs to make sure that what we're experiencing now with this pandemic, that it doesn't happen again. And that's what we need to think about. Start thinking ahead, common sense, you know. And so that's what the Indigenous communities face. And we're used to it, you know, survival. We live off the land, we hunt, we fish, you know, we do all of those things. But if this oil pipeline comes through and all this fracking, that's going to destroy our medicines. the indigenous communities, we have medicines that the white doctors don't have. You know, we have cures for everything, but it has to do with our way of life, our Lakota way of life. And that's one thing that I wanted to talk about. And I wanted to end it here. And, you know, I want to say thank you for the prayers. You know, prayers really work at this time, you know, at these times of mourning when people are losing their lives. You know, prayer is what we could rely on, but we have to keep safe and we have to keep our community safe. And, you know, this COVID-19 proves that oil is not essential and that we need to create a more sustainable government, more sustainable economies for everybody, so we're not rushing around buying bottled water, you know, buying toilet paper off the shelves. You know, we need to start thinking about the elders and being there for them because they've been through hard times. But I just want to say thank you, and that our ancestors, if it wasn't for our ancestors, we wouldn't be here today. And we're still fighting today. We're still fighting. This is an act of genocide with this pipeline going through, with all this fracking. You know, if you notice, the KXL pipeline is only going just maybe a quarter mile, half a mile off these reservations. It's really sad to see that's happening. But you know, it is an act of genocide. It should be considered a hate crime, but it's not. You know, our government isn't like that. But the only thing we can rely on at this moment in time is prayer and supporting one another. You know, with this
Awesome. Thank you, Angeline. We we had to cut her a little bit short. She had a couple other points, but we do have one more speaker that we want to give enough time. So we're going to move on to our next speaker. Ben Finnegan is a 23-year-old community organizer from Bozeman, Montana. They dropped out of college and moved to Philadelphia in 2018 to organize full-time with the Sunrise Movement, and are now back finishing up their degree at Cornell University and doing mutual aid organizing. In May, they will be moving back to Bozeman to work with the Montana Racial Equity Project and to continue building power with Sunrise Montana. Ben is an amazing organizer and a personal friend, so I'm really excited to have Ben on today. So I'll pass it over to Ben.
Hi, everybody. Happy Earth Day. Thank you so much for having me on. Thanks for the intro, Devin. It's good to see you. Okay, so I think the way I want to start is with this saying that I've been thinking about for a while. And that saying is that the personal is political. I'll say that one more time. The personal is political. So when I was living and organizing in Philadelphia, there was this older organizer named Mark Engler. And he was sitting down with us at the dinner table with my friends and I, and he told us this phrase, the personal is political. And it's one of those phrases that I think it rings with a lot of truth. But it's one of those things also that it takes time and experience and reflection to really figure out like what that truly means. So real quick, the history of that saying, the personal is political, it's rooted in the Black freedom movement in the 60s, and it's also rooted in feminist organizing in the 60s. And the saying goes is that the personal is political because our personal lives are deeply political. Our personal lives are all connected deeply to one another. The issues that we have, no matter what they are deeply connected to one another. And to me, the personal is political means that we all have a stake in each other's personal and collective liberation. And so I know I could go on all day about statistics and listing out all the reasons why we need a Green New Deal, why we need to cut off our addiction to fossil fuels, and why we need to transform our economy and our culture and our way of being. But the personal is political, to me, also reminds me to try to stay grounded in what the Green New Deal would really, really mean for my life personally, for the lives of my family, for the lives of my loved ones and the people that I don't even know, but who I know that I'm connected to through our shared humanity. And so when I think of the reasons why we need a Green New Deal, I think of the people that I organize with in Philadelphia. I think of the poverty in North Philadelphia. I think of homelessness and what housing as a human right would mean for all those people and personal friends I have that have experienced homelessness. I think of the fossil fuel infrastructure in Philadelphia and all around our country. Gas plants that are always put in low-income neighborhoods and immigrant neighborhoods, in Black and brown neighborhoods, and the extremely high rates of cancer and asthma that people in those neighborhoods have been experiencing. And I think of how in the summer, before I moved to Philadelphia, the story of a young girl who passed away because she had asthma, and the Philadelphia school system did not have enough money to have a school nurse. When I think of why we need a Green New Deal and why this is a personal issue as well as a political issue, I think of my friends on reservations throughout our state and throughout other states. I recently, I've been trying to connect with friends in these times of COVID. And I was just talking to a friend who grew up on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. And he was remembering growing up there and the addiction, the methamphetamine, the poverty and the suicide. And I was thinking about what a Green New Deal would mean for my friend Jamie and his people, what a jobs guarantee would mean. I'm thinking of the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women and the violence of fossil fuel infrastructure and the man camps that are associated with pipelines and oil fields. And I'm thinking of all of the lost potential right now in our country. I'm thinking of friends who are brilliant, brilliant human beings who never got the chance to go to college because it wasn't in the cards. The money was not there. And I'm thinking about what a right to higher education, to free college would mean under the Green New Deal, and all of that lost potential that could really go towards giving people access to the power and knowledge that they could use to do so much good. And I'm thinking also of the lost potential of future generations living in a world where the climate crisis has gotten worse, and all that potential that we could salvage and uplift when we pass the Green New Deal. So I want to take a minute to have everybody on this call reflect about the phrase, the personal is political, and think about what the Green New Deal would really mean for you and your people, your family, loved ones, and the people you don't know. I want you to think about that. And I think everybody can use the chat and maybe just put in the chat, type a few words about what the Green New Deal would mean to you in real terms, tangibly. I'll give like a minute to let those answers come in. Yeah, so I'm hearing and seeing hope. Thank you, Laura. I'm seeing healthcare security. Thank you, Marta. A livable future for my 6-year-old from Winona. Homes for all, better access to health, a debt-free future, justice, humanity having a future, being able to live in a world where children know that the adults around them have their best interest in mind, knowing that they are cared about, organizing with friends who don't have to worry in the same way about everyday needs, being able to bring children into this world. There's so many more. And these are all the reasons that we are truly fighting for a Green New Deal. The personal is political. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I kind of want to end by just some reflections that I've had about COVID and the times that we're in. I think we're seeing more clearly than ever that in these times, our country and our world and our people need a Green New Deal. COVID is showing in really, really stark ways the failures of capitalism. It's showing how our government never set up systems that allowed people to prosper in the first place. And it's showing what happens when the means of survival, like healthcare, like homes, like breathable air, when those means of survival are privatized and when people don't have access to them. It's causing extremely high rates of death among BIPOC people, in particular, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And it shows so clearly the legacy of slavery and genocide in our country and how that legacy lives on today and how we have not, to this day, really fully addressed that legacy. It shows how our system continues to oppress people and shows how the wealthiest among us will profit off of a system rooted in oppression. But as Devin mentioned at the beginning of this call, I've been doing mutual aid organizing here in New York, and the other thing I think that COVID has shown me is that in these times and all times, even if we can't depend upon a government run by the wealthy few, even if we can't depend on a system of capitalism, we can always depend upon our neighbors. We can depend upon the resilience, the goodness, and the power of community. And I've seen so many instances of this in mutual aid organizing here in New York and all across the country. Mutual aid groups springing up all over the place, caring for their neighbors, getting food delivered to those who need it, sharing money, sharing resources, and even doing the emotional labor of making themselves available to just talk through what has been going on with people. It's been really, really beautiful and hopeful to see. And I think the thing that I've taken away mostly from COVID, besides the failures of capitalism, is that people inherently know how to organize. People know how to build effective, sustainable systems of collective care that lead to a more interdependent and resilient world. And so I know that we're going to win the election in 2020, and we're gonna push Joe Biden as hard as we possibly can to adopt a Green New Deal that lives up to our standards. But we also don't need to wait for a president that aligns perfectly with us. Right now, we can organize. We can build power in our own state in Montana. We can build power in our towns and make the Green New Deal a reality locally. We can organize our neighborhood and even our groups of friends. And the decade of the Green New Deal, it doesn't have to wait for any president or any one person. The Green New Deal can happen right now. We can start making it a reality now. And it can start with us. Yeah, and that's what I got. So thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ben. That was amazing. Oh, yeah. That hit me for sure. So thank you so much. Yeah. We the people have the power. We communities over capitalism. We've got this. So all that being said, Ben was our last speaker. I really appreciate you all of I really appreciate all of you being here. It really means a lot to me, having put so much work into this. But what means even more to me is what you choose to do after this rally. I hope that it's abundantly clear to everyone here that it's up to us to change this world, and that we are so far beyond the brink that voting every 2 years and posting on Facebook isn't enough. It's not going to save us, nor enact the type of radical change we need to survive. We are all in this fight together, and we must continue together until we've won a livable future for ourselves and generations to come. Things are happening locally around the world, and now is a better time than any to get involved. If you're not sure how, join an organization and they'll guide you through the sometimes messy process of climate organizing. Otherwise, we have a document with some next steps that you can all check out. I'm going to copy and paste it and put it into the chat. Oh, thanks, Caitlin. Now it's in the chat twice. Awesome. I'd especially like to highlight Earth Day Live, as well as Earth Day events happening all around Montana. Earth Day Live is happening for 72 hours straight. It's nonstop. You can look it up on Google. It's pretty accessible. And in that actions document, there are some local Earth Day events as well. Like Ben was mentioning, mutual aid is super important. It's happening in Missoula. It's happening all over Montana. You can find your local hub, or you can find your local mutual aid organizations here at this link I just dropped in the chat. And yeah, definitely engage in mutual aid. That is critical. Like Ben was saying, our government has essentially left us out to dry. The $1,200 stimulus check, which most of us haven't even gotten yet, is not going to save us. We're going to save us. And I think that's really important to recognize. And finally, something more immediate that you can do. I'm going to put this in the chat as well. This rally was kid-friendly, but if you're not feeling so kid-friendly, you can text NOKXL to 69866 and call Governor Bullock to stop construction on the Keystone XL pipeline. Other than that, thank you so much, everyone, for coming to our rally. If you'd like to stick around, we have one last Q&A session that might go a little bit past 2 o'clock. But if not, thank you all so much for coming. Join an organization, take action, and continue fighting for the future of our planet. We are the hope we're looking for. And even if ever there were a time to reshape the world we are living in and create a better society for everyone, it is right now. Thank you. So feel free to log off if you need to, but otherwise, we have Ben here, we have Patrick, and we have Angeline Cheek. So yeah, ask away. Feel free to unmute and ask a question. Otherwise, maybe this will end on time. Oh, looks like Angeline is not on anymore. Go ahead, Ramona. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question for Ben. Ben, I organize with a group called Families for a Livable Climate, and we work with Sunrise here on occasion and collaborate and other groups. And we're looking at, we've learned a lot from Sunrise, the little bit we've been exposed to the organizing techniques, and are really interested in learning more. Is there an opportunity for folks who are not considered youth to tap in and learn about Sunrise organizing techniques?
Hi, Winona. I've actually heard about the work that you're doing from Daniel and some other Missoula folks. So I'm really grateful for the work that you've been doing. And yeah, there are always opportunities to learn more. I know that Sunrise has recently been doing Sunrise School. Maybe someone else on this call can talk more about that, but that's sort of an online political education and organizing trainer series. I believe signups for that are still available on the Sunrise website. And if not, then there will be recordings. So personally, the way that I learned everything I know and everything I know about organizing, it came from doing the work, but it also came from other organizer trainings that I went to that were not Sunrise led. So a couple organizations that I know about that are really, really incredible and like churn out really incredible organizers are Training for Change. Training for Change is based in Philadelphia, and you can register for like in-person trainings there, but they also have a bunch of resources and recordings on their website. And one more organization that is really, really good is the INE Institute. I'll put that in the chat. And the INE Institute is another really, really great organization that is led by incredible organizers from labor to environment to racial justice. And they have a lot of great resources as well.
Sweet. Thank you, Ben. If you have any other questions, feel free to drop an asterisk in the chat like Winona did and like I just did now. But yeah, I actually have a question for Patrick. I'm just curious, what would be, in your opinion, what would be the best first step everyday folks could take towards working towards food sovereignty here in Missoula and around Montana?
Something that, I mean, in terms of political action, always contacting the governor. Something that he has done is implemented that SNAP recipients receive full benefits, and that isn't forever. And so SNAP, the SNAP service is something that is a safety net for a lot of households and a lot of people. And the understanding that, people are, going hungry, that there should be a reevaluation about the process, about how much money a household gets or is qualified for. So there's like those types of things. Most importantly, if you have land, we like to have healthy grasses and things like healthy yards, but if you have the land, do some gardening boxes or do some gardening within, your means. Those are some of the more immediate things that you can do. But this germ pandemic, puts restrictions on about, what the extent of our help can be. Once this passes, that people really do organize together, organize for bargaining power in terms of how we acquire foods. We're getting foods through distributors right now, and we only can get a price depending on how much money we're really willing to put down for the order. So if we can bargain together as communities to purchase our foods together, those are probably down the road, but once we organize together and show our power together as communities, we have a better opportunity of establishing programs or things that the government can offer us at a better rate, I believe.
Sweet. Thank you, Patrick. So I think Daniel has a question, and I know that Ben has to get going relatively soon here. do you think like one more question, Ben? Got a doozy for you. So Daniel, do you want to go off mute and ask, or should I just do it? All right. Noted. So, okay, he's stuck at work, kinda. So Daniel wants to know, how can we ensure, and either of you can answer this, but I think this is more Ben's area of expertise. How can we ensure that we come out of this pandemic with capitalism greatly suppressed and dismantled?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. There are two things that I'm thinking of. I think two like places to push. One of those is pushing through advocacy. And so another really inspiring thing that I've seen popping up nationally are rent freeze and rent strike campaigns, and kind of pushing in the direction of housing as a human right. So it's directly anti-capitalist in that it's acknowledging that housing, which is one of the means of survival, is not something that should be privatized. It should be something that is a human right. I think pushing for campaigns like that, and doing advocacy in that way is one way to push back against capitalism. And then the other way, I think Patrick was actually getting at. So I really want to hear their take on this as well. But I think that in addition to advocacy and putting pressure on gatekeepers and the state and people with power to change, I think we also don't need to wait to dismantle capitalism. I think that we can help dismantle capitalism right now by actually producing and creating systems of interdependence that don't rely on churning a profit. And we can set up systems like mutual aid systems, for example, that ensure that our neighbors get food, that resources are shared freely and without asking for anything in return. And that could be food, it could be money, it could be housing, or any other sort of resource. And my hope is, and my suspicion is, that these mutual aid systems will continue and will grow even after COVID is over. But yeah, like Patrick was talking about like community farming and things like that. So I want to hear their take as well.
Something within the Jocko Valley that we have as a resource is the Western Montana Growers Co-op. And what that is in terms of the producers in Western Montana, they've created a co-op to be able to really, use their bargaining power again to sell their foods at market against, these major competitors such as, Archer Daniels or Monsanto, these huge corporate elite that run our food system as it is right now, that they have an ability to compete at their level. That's what the producers are doing, and there's specifically one producer within our program, and they have a business model that is being used, I'm pretty sure, since the 70s, when the first push for environmental conservation efforts began, and it's called a community-sponsored agriculture program. These are more nonprofit business models for farmers to use for their farms. It requires participants in their program. We have a CSA program, community-sponsored agriculture producer called Harlequin in the Arley area. And that's what they do essentially is people pay into the program like a subscription, and they get around 25 pounds of food a week. And you can also pay for the whole season too as well. It doesn't have to be weekly, it can be for the whole season. And these are just like the in terms of profit-driven business models versus sustainable business models that we can incorporate in the businesses that we may seem socially and economically viable for our communities.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. That was really great. So, like I said, Ben has to go, busy with mutual aid and studying. So again, thank you so much, Ben. It was really good to see you, man. Hopefully we'll see you around. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, y'all. Happy Earth Day.
Okay. Do we have any more questions for Patrick or any of the virtual Earth Day organizers? Again, feel free to drop an asterisk in the chat, just like that. Give it a few seconds. All right, cool. Yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you all again so much for coming. Please, please, please take action. If I see you voting and sharing things on Facebook, and that's the only thing you're doing after this, and I know you joined this call, I'm going to be supremely disappointed, first of all. But yeah, thank you all so much for coming. This was amazing. This was super inspiring to see everybody here. If everybody wants to go off mute, we can do a quick cheer. We can do Earth Day on 3. One,
I think we might
2,
need,
3.
we need help getting off mute. We need
Happy Earth Day.
Okay.
Woo! Earth Day. Yay, food sovereignty is my favorite.
Thank you, everybody. Everybody have a good day.
You too, Patrick.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Everyone,
Thank you.
thanks.
Bye.